What's good, you gang? Back at it again with another video. I'm not gaming today, as you can see. I'm going to be reacting to a couple of horror shorts. This is called three Wendy's Krabby Patty horror shorts animated, and it was uploaded by Horror Shorts Party. I'm going to be adding a new thing to the channel. It's called Freaky Fun Friday. Corey, I'm not copying you with this Spooky Scary Sunday thing. If you're watching this, just trying to be like you. You're like one of my favorite YouTubers. Cornered by Exploding Tomato. Let's get straight into it. If you want to see more reactions to this, make sure to like and subscribe. Bye. Go. Horror Shorts Party. Narration by Terrence Nicholson. The Disturbing Secret Formula.
I was driving home after a 12-hour shift when I passed by the Wendy's near my house and noticed new posters put up next to the road. They were advertising a Krabby Patty. I was genuinely intrigued. It seemed like the sort of thing that should have happened a dozen times by now, given that the Krabby Patty has been such an iconic burger over the years. But it was the first time I'd ever seen it made in real life. However, it was easy to see that the Krabby Patty was immensely popular, as the line for the drive-thru was completely full. The inside looked packed as hell, too.
Yeah, let me know in the comments if you tried it.
Line forever with the masses, and come back later when things died down a little bit. To get into the spirit of things, I watched SpongeBob for a couple hours to kill some time. SpongeBob was a big part of my childhood, so I was really excited to see if the Krabby Patty lived up to the hype. I eventually got dressed and started walking toward the Wendy's, which was only about 10 minutes away by foot. When I got there, it seemed pretty dead. There wasn't a single car in line, and it didn't look like there was anyone inside. I was worried it had closed as it was getting late, but I walked up to the building just to be sure. Before I got to the door, I walked past a guy who had a box truck backed up to the kitchen door and was unloading crates of boxes. He noticed me walking in.
Sucker, that man got bodies in his trunk right now.
To the restaurant and smiled creepily. At first, I thought he was just being polite, but after a second, I realized that smile didn't sit right with me. It was off-putting for some reason, but I couldn't tell why.
I ended up
brushing him off and headed inside. The place was definitely empty except for myself and the cashier. I then walked up to the register. Behind it was perhaps the weirdest looking person I've ever seen. It was an old woman, maybe close to 70, or at least that's how she looked. And when she smiled, her teeth were appalling. They were all dead and rotten. I considered leaving just because of her. While I wish now that I had at the time, I didn't want to be rude. I approached the counter and placed my order for a Krabby Patty. She punched in my order and told me to take a seat. Supposedly, my food would be ready in a few minutes, but I doubted that there was anybody left in the kitchen at all. The idea of that woman going back to make it herself tremendously lowered my expectations for what I was about to eat. And the fact that I was the only customer in there gave me a weird feeling about the whole thing. I sat there in silence, looking out the window at the advertisement which was on the end of the situation in the first place. I wished I had stayed.
I'm sorry you guys can't see my face. I'm going to be telling my reactions at the end of every single one. But that man that was staring at this man right here, I know he got bodies in his trunk, bro.
Oh my god. Thanks. It smells great. Thank you. Go on. Try it. Actually, I'd like some privacy, please. Well, you see, we had some complaints throughout the day about our Krabby Patty, so I'd like to see if I made it correctly. That's okay. I'll just come back to the counter and tell you what I thought when I'm finished. I don't want to be watched while I eat the damn Krabby Patty. I didn't know what else to do. The woman had screamed in my face and I was alone with her. I could have fought her off, but she was just an old lady. I decided my privacy wasn't worth it, so I unwrapped the Krabby Patty.
That's not stopping me. Getting elbowed.
I immediately noticed something off about the taste. I hoped it would turn into something better, but the more I chewed it, the more disgusting it became. When I tried to swallow it, I gagged it right back up and spit it onto the wrapper. Just the piece I spit out and smeared it all over my mouth.
Oh, the audacity.
I shook so hard she fell to the ground. But instead of shouting in pain, she started laughing. I ran out of the restaurant, leaving her in the Krabby Patty behind. Outside, I ran into the same creepy guy loading boxes in the kitchen. He saw the look on my face, which made him smile even wider than the first time. I ignored him and ran home. Once inside, I locked the door and tried to get my head straight. What just happened? Should I call the police? What kind of crime would that even count as? I don't have a clue. So I felt like I should just leave it alone, like a bad dream. I was still hungry and needed to get that horrible taste out of my mouth. So I had Uber Eats delivered to my door. A few days later, I had nearly forgotten all about the Krabby Patty incident. I was attending a funeral in town for an old relative, sitting in the local cemetery with all my family members, when I saw a face that shouldn't have been there. It was the same man with the truck, the one unloading boxes and transferring them into the Wendy's. He was dressed in a different work uniform than the last time I saw him. Finally, I put two and two together and realized he was a groundskeeper for the cemetery. I've been sick ever since. I know there's some Krabby Patties that the public doesn't know about.
Oh my god!
Not what it seems.
I told you we got bodies in this truck! Oh my god.
My best friend Nick and I used to work at Wendy's together. We only planned to work there after high school for a few months, but when neither of us ended up going to college, we got complacent, so we worked there for years. We were stuck working full-time, always doing the night shift together. I worked the grill while Nick took orders. The hours were long and brutal, as the Wendy's we worked at was extreme.
My expectations for what I was about to eat.
My bad.
And the fact that I was the only customer under the wrapper. That angered.
My bad, y'all. Krabby Patty overtime.
My best friend Nick and I used to work at Wendy's together. We only planned to work there after high school for a few months, but when neither of us ended up going to college, we got complacent, so we worked there for years. We were stuck working full-time, always doing the night shift together. I worked the grill while Nick took orders. The hours were long and brutal, as the Wendy's we worked at was extremely busy. The benefit of working together was that we got to talk about the shift afterwards and bond over the trauma. One of the things we complained about was our boss.
Just hanging out with your boy.
Purposes, I'll refer to him as his nickname we had for him, Mr. Krabs.
Oh my
Mr.
god.
Krabs was a psycho nutcase about saving money and maximizing profits, just like the character in SpongeBob. Something about his business practices admittedly made his Wendy's the most popular one in town, but it came at a high price for the people who worked under him. We never saw anything more than minimum wage without tips, despite how much money we made for Mr. Krabs slaving away in his kitchen. Breaks were pretty much non-existent, let alone paid.
Look at this Spider-Man realistic Kingpin sitting in this chair smoking a cigarette. Okay, bro.
Time off or overtime. If you even mentioned any sort of workers' rights, he would lose it to Mr. Krabs. His employees were just machines to make him money, even screaming in their faces if he ever caught them doing something that might cost him a few cents. But one day, I found out just how far he would go. I was making a few orders on the grill when I heard the distinct sound of Mr. Krabs yelling at someone. The door to Mr. Krabs' office was slightly open, so I walked away from the grill to peek my head in. I remember seeing Mr. Krabs snapping at Nick, screaming in his face. Nick was just sitting there taking it. Suddenly, Mr. Krabs leaped over his desk and grabbed Nick by the neck. I watched in shock as Nick struggled to get free while Mr. Krabs looked like he was going to strangle him.
Bro, if you don't break out that choke,
to get out of Mr. Krabs' chokehold. I quickly looked away and went back to the grill. I was stunned. I knew that Mr. Krabs was a psycho, but I never realized up until then just how unhinged.
Are you for real? Hold on, do no 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 no. Do 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 do.
He truly was.
Okay, we're back.
Later on, Nick told me what had happened. He said it was because he had given a customer a refund. We honestly didn't know what to do. We thought about quitting as we had done many times before, but as always, we were too afraid to be unemployed. We also contemplated on calling the police, but we were genuinely scared of what Mr. Krabs would do afterwards, so we just went back to being complacent. Then, one day, the stars aligned in the worst ways. Wendy's announced that they were planning to launch a SpongeBob Krabby Patty burger to the public. Nick and I knew this was it for us. Every time there was a limited edition menu item, we got slammed. And this time, it was the real-life Mr. Krabs about to be selling Krabby Patties. In the days leading up to the release of the Krabby Patty, we spent our time dreading the horror that was about to surround the building. Mr. Krabs taught me and all the other line cooks how to put together the Krabby Patty. It was surreal. I knew myself, Nick, and the other employees were going to go through hell for the next couple of weeks. And before I knew it, a horde of hungry, impatient, entitled customers descended upon us, cramming into the restaurant like sardines, wrapped around the building and pouring out onto the street. Each and every one of them wanted the same thing, the Krabby Patty. My grill didn't go a moment without being entirely covered in patties. I made more burgers in an hour that day than ever before. The customers were getting angrier and angrier by the minute. I knew there would be no break in sight. Even with the full roster of people working, we were still hopelessly understaffed. And where was Mr. Krabs during all this chaos? Sitting in his office doing nothing to help us. I looked over at Nick and saw that he wasn't doing any better. Despite having worked like a dog all night to take orders, the line to his register was still on the door. Screaming in his face, blaming him for having to wait so long. I knew he was fighting for his life.
What do you think you're doing? Slacking off in me restaurant?
Dang.
Sorry, sir. Now, get back to work.
Mr. Krabs turned around and started to walk away. After that, the chaos just kept coming. I didn't think I could take much more of it without cracking. Then, I looked over to Nick for the first time in a while, just to see him collapse. He twitched and flailed, his eyes wide open. I ran to help him, but Mr. Krabs screamed at both of us to get back to work and stop disturbing the customers. I'd finally had it. I ignored Mr. Krabs and called 911. And Mr. Krabs fired us for slacking off. Unfortunately, Nick didn't make it. He died on the way to the hospital.
No!
His family is rightfully suing Mr. Krabs for a litany of wrongdoings. Yet as of now, that rotten cheapskate is still running the Wendy's despite what happened. I still can't get over how my friend is gone now. All because of that stupid Krabby Patty.
Oh my god. Bro, that was crazy.
I want to remain anonymous to avoid losing my job, or risk anybody thinking I have anything against people like the one I'm about to mention. I won't say their names either. I've worked at Wendy's for a long time. I know how to do everything that goes into running a fast food.
Hold on, I probably can't see. Hold on.
I can cook, take orders, and deep clean, all while making sure the next shift is
black like me.
I like to think I could hold my own in a fast food joint. But I remember quite clearly when the Krabby Patty was announced. I didn't quite get it at first, but then I realized it was from the show SpongeBob. The whole thing was going viral on the internet. With that in mind, I thought I was prepared. I was, in no uncertain terms, the farthest from prepared for a day of work that I ever been. That day was like a trip to hell and back. It felt like we did 10,000 orders in one shift. The number of people I saw in the restaurant that day could fill the stadium. I spent most of my time at the front of the register or putting out fires. Every single staff member was firing on all cylinders, because they knew if they weren't, there would be a complete breakdown in the dining area. However, despite all the different things that were happening, one face stood out against all the rest. I first saw him about half an hour into my shift. He was a strange-looking guy, a bit cross-eyed, so he couldn't take care of himself. I figured he was homeless, so when he ordered a Krabby Patty like everyone else, I assumed that would be his big meal for the day. But then, something strange happened. After he got his food, I saw him find a spot to sit in the dining area, which since it was completely packed was just the floor of an empty corner. A little while after he finished his burger, he showed up again. I was surprised to take his order for another Krabby Patty. That was the only thing he said, too. He didn't say hi or smile or say thank you. He just said one thing. Can I have a Krabby Patty?
I'm sorry, can I have a Krabby Patty? No, you can't!
To admit, there was something sweet about it at first. There was obviously something a little off about it, or maybe he was on something. But he didn't seem to be dangerous or disruptive. All he wanted was the same Krabby Patty everyone else wanted. But then he showed up again and again, always asking for a Krabby Patty. And what was once charming and a little funny gradually became concerning, as I noticed he only lined up for my register, and every time I saw him, he looked more delirious. Finally, I realized these Krabby Patties were like a drug to him. He was hooked, obsessed. When I knew that, it didn't feel so good to take his order anymore, but I couldn't just stop. He was a customer. He must have eaten over 100 Krabby Patties. I had no idea how he came up with that kind of cash, nor could I understand how a single person could possibly eat that much. When it finally came to closing time, he was our last customer in line. By then, he still came up and asked for another Krabby Patty. I unfortunately had to kick him out. I felt bad for him, and guilty that I had to let him get to that point since it seemed like he had legitimate issues with self-control. Regardless, once he was gone, it was time to clean up and finally head home. I lay back on my couch, too exhausted to even turn on the TV. I was about to pass out in my living room with my work uniform still on. Then, at the very edge of sleep, I heard a knock on the window. I ignored it, thinking it was just part of a dream I was about to have. But then I heard it again. I forced myself to get up and check it out. I walked quietly to my door and pulled back the curtains of my front window and saw the guy standing outside my house. That's when the guy pressed his hands against the window and said, "Can I have a Krabby Patty?" Then, in a flash, he went ballistic. He started slamming his fist against the glass. "Can I have a Krabby Patty?" I ran away in a panic, grabbing my phone and locking myself in my closet to call the police. While they were on their way, I heard the window shatter.
Dang!
Trying to keep quiet while having the police on the other line. As I waited for the police to arrive, all I could hear was faint footsteps climbing up the stairs. All I could do was wait and hope that the guy wasn't going to get me. And thankfully, he didn't. The police finally showed up and entered my house to arrest me. Sadly, my fears about him were true. It was found out later that he had some severe mental disorders. From what investigators could gather, he'd become obsessed with me and used the Krabby Patty in an attempt to get me to like him. I had to file a restraining order, even though he creeped me out and scared the crap out of me. I think that's for the best, as long as he stays away from me.
Oh my God. Bro, that was insane. Hold on. Bro, that is just wild. That is just wild. Hey, don't feel like it. If y'all want to see more Freaky Fun Fridays like this, even though it's on a Wednesday, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will be seeing y'all in the next video. Bro, sucker, he built like a